Yesterday. Welcome to the Midday Show. I'm Jeff Everett. He is Mark Messina. We're going to update you on the Route 81 pileup. We showed the video of it the other day. We have some official numbers from PSP we wanted to just share with you. Some good news stories from some local schools and colleges. Williamsport Millionaires, Hughesville Spartans, Lycoming Warriors. We thought, we're gonna shed some light on some of the good things going on in our area for a change. So that's what we're gonna do. And then some controversial statements from the PIAA, something near and dear to my heart, something you have to listen to me complain about all the time. There were some statement made after the state basketball playoffs that I want to dive into that I just find absolutely repugnant. Is that a good word?
Repugnant is a much better word than I thought I was going to get.
I knew you would like that.
That was nice.
Before we get to everything on the docket today, Mark, how are you feeling?
Well, I have lots of things to say. Today was not a good morning. It was one of those mornings.
Sure.
You act like we have no heat or you're going to work on the dock afterwards. I don't understand
you don't like the hat?
We're inside.
It's called branding. It's called marketing. What do you mean?
I mean, I get it, but it's not that cold in here. Is your head cold?
Wait, I don't understand. Are you upset about the hat?
No, I just don't understand why you're wearing a winter. Like, do you have gloves on? Do you have a scarf?
I mean, let's back up for a second. If I had like a baseball cap with the logo, I'd wear the baseball cap. I don't, so I wear the knitted hat.
So it's just marketing.
If you want me to never be a company name, that's all you had to say.
I thought it was weird you had a hat on today because it's not that cold in here.
I'm honestly, no, I'm not that cold. You know what it was, though? When I was walking in, we did have a slight flurry, but it was like sleet. There was some hail to it. I don't know if other people experienced this in our area, but I was coming down into town at the exact time. So I grabbed my hat as I went out the door just because it was snowing, essentially. So
no, and I do get, when you come inside when it's cold, you don't always strip that. Sometimes you stay bundled for a while you warm up.
Yeah.
And then you're sitting on the couch and you realize you still have, more clothes on than you usually do because you're cold. So I get that.
I am too. I'm very much, Hannah makes fun of me too, because I am very much like a security. I like heavier,
you have a blankie.
Kind of.
When you sit on the couch, you wrap in a blankie.
I don't know if when I wear my quarter zips and stuff, the collar's usually up instead of down. Have you noticed that?
I have.
It's just the idea of just that comfort, the extra layer.
I understand.
Okay. I get it.
So anyway, other than that, I'm good. We're back to do more Will Smith talk all day, every day. I do want to mention a couple things. Number one, I don't know if I said this on the air. Your housewarming gift did come in. I talked about that. I ordered it late, but there is some assembly required, and I haven't assembled it yet. So it's coming, but it's sitting there at my house in the packaging that it arrived in. I also I don't know if we do this much with advertisers, but this is kind of like a new advertiser we have and a public service announcement at the same time.
Okay.
We've signed Solar Sun Tanning, which is up on the Crick Road.
Yeah.
When you go outside, right now you don't think of anything about sun because right now the sun is a rumor. But we are almost to April, so people are going to be at proms in like a month.
Oh, that's
true.
And
it seems impossible.
Yeah.
When you walk outside today, the prom is a month away.
Sure.
But so, 'tis the season, especially for the guys don't care, but the girls who don't want to be pasty white when they show up. Okay, there are some guys that care. More girls care than guys. But the appointments are going to fill up, and they're going to fill up fast because this is the season. Yeah. So you can go on our website and find the link to it, or Solar Sun Tanning. It's on the Crick Road. It's right in by Heller's right there.
Yeah.
And they have the UV lights, and they have the spray-ons, and they have everything if you just don't want to look ghostly for your prom pictures.
Yeah.
Because if you go outside today, you ain't getting any tan.
No, you are not. Can we dive into
It's cold.
It's very cold. Can we dive into the Route 81?
Absolutely.
Let's dive into the Route 81 real quick. The PSP report came out, so some official numbers. Because if you were online at all, we had shared the video on Monday. The video, I think I've watched it another 10 times afterwards just to watch the car miss.
Because you are a sick individual.
I just can't believe the guy talk about, I would have went straight to Atlantic City if I was that guy.
No. His luck is over.
That's it. That was
he should never.
It is unbelievable that he was okay. Unfortunately, 6 others were not. 6 fatalities in the I-81 crash. You can find the numbers on NorthcentralPa.com. And the videos too are still on NorthcentralPa.com as well that you can go back and look up. There were lanes still closed as of today. I know this morning that was like they were still trying to clear stuff off, and so the traffic could get through. However, there were lanes closed off on it. 6 fatalities is the official number. 26 injured from the chain reaction crash that occurred on I-81 this week near LaBelle, Pennsylvania. Yeah, and the roadway was opened up around 12:30 a.m. on Wednesday. Crash occurred Monday of March 28th from snow squalls. Again, you can see the full article on NorthcentralPA.com. Just absolutely, I have not gotten over the official video that we showed on Monday yet.
But I was thinking about it because my first thought was, and you look at this picture, and this picture kind of shows it clearly that it warmed up a little bit, and now the road is fine. Essentially, you can tell it's a little wet, but that could be from fire hoses, and who knows.
Sure.
But we saw the video, and it had gone white, and the roads were covered, and the roads were slick, and whatever. So my first thought was, how awful would this have been if it was mid-January,
Sure,
and it didn't get to 45 degrees the next day, and it was still, the conditions were still awful, and so that's my first thought. Then my second thought was, if it's January, are people a little more cautious, a little more careful? Because now that we've gotten into, like, no one expected in late March when we've had 60-degree days, and we've had nice and bad, and that's why I hate March, because it's so fluctuable. Fluctuable? Is that a word?
Yeah.
And if it isn't, I just made it one. And how many people went out and thought, well, the road conditions could be bad today? It's March.
right.
So maybe, I don't know. Those are the two thoughts. If it was January, it'd be so much worse, because it might not have melted away and it might be hard to get the rubbish away. But if it was January, maybe there would have been less traffic and it would have been slower and they'd have been more cautious and it wouldn't have happened in the first place. So I don't know. But anyway, it's bad. It's bad.
Not great. So we're going to switch it up. We're going to go to some local stories that are good news. I said to you today, I said, hey, you know what? I noticed on our trend on NorthcentralPA.com, there were a lot of like good local school stories. So I was like, you know, all the controversy and the slapping going on in the world nowadays, maybe we should talk about some of the good stories that are going on around locally.
We do need to mention a little bit of the history of the slap.
Okay.
Once we get beyond this, because these good stories are good.
Yeah. So let's.
How's that for profound? That should be on a T-shirt.
It could be on a T-shirt. Let's start here with Williamsport Area School District. They are partnering with Giant to fight child hunger. Here you can see. I always love the pictures with the checks. That is like, have you ever gotten a hold of a Giant check or like a big check?
My brother got one at Yankee Stadium.
Oh,
we have it somewhere.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. It's like in storage somewhere.
It's in his house somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by just the Giant
It's
check.
a big piece of cardboard.
I know.
It is cool.
But still, it is. I hope that's my housewarming gift. I hope it's just
not.
a blank
Unfortunately,
Giant check.
you know, if I'd have thought of it earlier, could you see
That was my hope.
He should have carried it into the bank.
Who's he?
My brother.
Oh, probably. Yes.
He should have carried it into the bank. The Yankees made a donation after he retired to Montoursville Athletics, I think.
Okay.
And he was number 35, so they made it for $35,000.
Yeah.
They have this ceremonial. Because I even said, what do you do with the check? I don't know. They wire the money. Like, I don't know. And
you just have it.
So if he would have walked into a bank, just kind of been like, here you go.
Would have been great.
Can you want me to sign it?
That's my dream, is to have a Giant check someday. So the Giant Company is continuing its childhood hunger initiative. Recent donation to the food service program at Williamsport Area School District. Over $8,000 contributed to the Williamsport School District from Giant and part of the Feeding School Kids initiative. The program has raised more than $1.4 million with an M in just under 2 months, January 1st through February 28th. And that is through the purchases at Giant, Martin's, and Giant Heirloom Market stores. So something good happening at Williamsport Area School District through Giant, partnering up together for childhood hunger.
Hold on, can you scroll through that?
Yeah.
Who made in 2 months? Who made 2.4 million?
The program has raised more than 1.4. So the program has raised more than 1.4 million in just under 2 months.
Do we know?
Yeah, through cash register purchases at Giant. So like,
so it's everywhere Giant is. That's where. Okay.
I would assume. So like when they walk up to the register, they go, "Would you like to round it off to the nearest dollar to help donate?"
I was wondering what the geographic, but it's probably everywhere Giant. Okay, that makes sense.
So that was
2.4 million. That's what is it? 1.4.
What's that?
Was it 1.4? That's still a
You
lot.
got 2.4 stuck in your head.
I don't know, but 1.4, it's still a lot. In 2 months, that's a lot of money.
And then we have two stories that are revolving around local school districts. A school in Lycoming County is doing its part to help Ukraine. I always forget the first name of it. The elementary school in Hughesville is Ashkar. So at Ashkar, there are efforts from students. They're doing a fundraiser. And what they're trying to do is they're doing a coin drive to donate to Ukrainian refugees. The organization is called Simply Yoga. They gather items like food blankets, water, Band-Aids, and diapers. And this is through a 6th grade student. The 6th grade class partnered with a teacher in Poland for the donations.
Coin drives are cool.
Yeah.
Coin drives can do well. Jerry has stories in previous lives and fundraisers and things where they did a coin drive somewhere and how much it was. I think for these kids, and I don't know, is Ashkar 1st through 6th? Do we know? I don't know.
I don't know the exact.
I don't know the age
for Ashkar.
But the beauty of this is just to kind of to get the kids at such a young age to anything you can do to grasp more of like what's going on there.
Sure.
That we're fortunate and this is what they're going through. And when you go home tonight, you don't have to worry about is your home going to get bombed? Is your, so just the whatever they raise is great.
Yeah.
But it is so important that we instill in all kids how fortunate we are and how much we should help where we have an opportunity to help.
Yeah.
So like what they're doing at Ashkar is wonderful.
Really, really neat. I just love them partnering up too with a teacher in Poland. Like
Yes.
just actually being connected and having that, I don't want to call it like a direct connection, but just knowing like it's not just some broader thing. Like they're actually connected with somebody
and I think that too makes it even more real world.
Yes.
For there's a real person because after I assume they're Zooming with this person. I'm guessing there are conversations. I'm trying to think how far ahead they are in time because they're probably 6 or 7 hours. So anyway, but even if they can just put a face with it and like there's a real person over there and she's going to talk with a bad accent and whatever, but it's still the more they can make it real and the more they can show to these kids because they see so much on TV. It's one of the things about the crash. When you watch it, there's a little bit of like, well, I've seen this before.
Sure.
I've seen the movies. I've seen the video games until where you kind of get that sense of this is real. And so that's what they've done at Ashkar, that they've helped these kids to grasp how real this is.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of adults who don't really grasp because we're so fortunate and live in a bubble and like what's going on there just doesn't happen here.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. So you can go to a PA homepage, WBRE, if you want to read more about Ashkar Elementary giving back to Ukraine. The last one, and this one's interesting for a lot of reasons. There is Lycoming College has a global leadership class, and they are having Zoom classes with students from Russia.
This is awesome.
This is really, really unique. And one of the so a lot of the class is based off of history. It sounds as if Lycoming students will give their perspective of like the Western viewpoint of history. The Russian students will give their viewpoint from the Eastern side of history, as we hear that from WP. But as they're exchanging these back and forth, with the WNP, one of the things that was said in the video was there's a student was essentially like, yeah, our last lesson was actually about Putin. So the last class that they had was the American students giving like a verbal report on the history of Putin and kind of the Western viewpoint of it. And then the Russian students gave their reports on Putin. And I find it absolutely fascinating that they get to not only learn it from their perspective, but they're also getting to learn it from another country's perspective. I find the whole thing very, very fascinating.
Well, I think, yes, I agree with you. One of the things that, one of the profound things that I learned growing up is people think like history is made up of facts.
Yeah.
And, there are certainly, factual, there's dates, there's, the day Abe Lincoln died and the day so-and-so got elected and the day we signed it. There are facts, but then there's a lot of opinions as to who is right, who is wrong, who is the aggressor, who is the victim, and my ex-wife's mother is British.
Okay.
And she will tell you after then, and then she married an American, and the kids were raised. They were a military family, but they were raised on American, either in America or on American military bases. And she's like, your history books on World War II are very different than our history books on World War II. And you never, they always joked about the people who win the war get to write the history books. And it's a cute little cliche, but it's true. And it's one of the things to extrapolate further. And I don't mean to go into onto a slippery slope here, but with and I can't think of it. What is the big theory that everyone's complaining about in schools? And critical race theory. And people think that like critical race theory is like there's so much history. What do you teach? And what perspectives of it do you teach? And that's much of the discussion that really comes out and about in this, because, if you want to talk about the American South, whether you get it from the white perspective or the black perspective is obviously going to be very different. So it's not like history is just dates and facts and numbers and nothing is disputable. It's like the law. It's open for interpretation, and your opinion of something and my opinion of something are all different. And that's what makes, to circle all the way back to this, it would be fascinating to hear what the Russian students are told about Putin, as opposed to what the American students are told about Putin, because I'm sure it's not the same.
No, I'm sure it's very, very different. So some of the other things that they talked about, and you kind of hinted this, the history of Russian leadership, the politics, other power dynamics that exist there. Really interesting when they showed us how he is portrayed in the media there. So students from Russia actually were able to stand up and talk about like the perception of Putin that they are given from their own media. And so I think as an American student, that would be absolutely neat, just to be able to actually hear other people's perspective of my age and what they think about it as well. I heard somebody once say, because you were talking about this, I had a history teacher, very prominent isn't the word, but to us, he was larger than life. Like when I was in 7th and 8th grade, this guy was just incredible. T.R. Smith, if you're out there.
You were the king of Blossburg.
You were, let's do this. I don't even know if TR understands how much we enjoyed and appreciated him. But I do remember like this idea of like facts being the foundation of history, but like there's still all these other things built on top of it.
Right.
And what's built on top of those facts very much depends on your perspective, my perspective, the perspectives that you and I don't even know about, those types of things. So that was always my interpretation of it that was handed down to me.
No, it is. It's like when a local government decides to spend money, like that's a fact. Did they spend it in the right place? That's an opinion.
Sure.
And that is part of history.
Yes.
Like what? Yeah. So I think we've covered that enough.
Neat.
But yes, I'm almost one of the other things, to take it to a different angle. I'm surprised that Russia is allowing that right now.
Maybe they have too many other things going on, and maybe it's slipping through the cracks. Maybe I'm trying to think. I mean, there has to be organizations, there has to be educational institutions that have permission to go outside of Eastern society. Wouldn't you assume?
Maybe.
Okay.
And maybe, I mean, it's so big, there's so many people, whatever.
Yeah.
That maybe it's not like, I don't know, maybe if we walked around Moscow today, it would just be business as usual and like every other typical place.
Okay.
Now, right now, we would think like country at war, like we think they're all sitting on their porches with, rocket launchers. But maybe in the cities, maybe in Russia, it is what it is.
Yeah.
You never know.
No, it's very, very true. So again, some neat stories from Williamsport Area High School, Hughesville, Ashcar Elementary, and also, is it Ashcar Elementary or Ashcar Middle School? I don't want to get that wrong.
No, I think Ashcar's Elementary.
Okay.
Doesn't Hughesville, and I could be wrong with this, doesn't it have, I didn't think it had a middle school. I thought all the elementary schools went to and then the junior high school thing.
I mean, I went to a school that was basically K through 12, but the high school is 7 through 12. So it's very possible.
I don't know.
That's
But
the
anyway,
case.
it is Ashgar Elementary, and good for them.
And then also a really neat story from Lycoming College as well. So again, some good local school news stories for you. That makes sense?
I don't even know if the Lycoming one is good. It's fascinating.
Yeah,
I
think it's good because
like the other ones are kind of good philanthropic like me. This is that would be a neat class to be in.
And I think that's good.
Oh,
I think
for the kids involved,
I get like no money's being raised. So like to your point,
right.
like philanthropically, it's not good. But like I would argue it's almost just as important. Like
in a different way, you're probably right.
I think 19 to 21-year-old kids getting to like hear the perspective of other people in the world in like in a structured setting is huge. I don't know how many 19 to 20-year-olds right now are getting to do that.
Well, and I think it shows too. And we've seen the protests from Russia. We know that not all the Russian people are in favor of this.
Just like any other country.
But this shows like, hey, he's just a normal Joe, just like we are. Sure. He's sitting in class. He's trying to get a degree. He rolled out of bed 10 minutes before class was. He brushed his teeth, threw a hat on, and barely got there, just like we did. Sure. So yeah, it is. That is neat.
Let's go. Can we complain now? Do I get to complain?
Well, I just want to mention this real quick, and then I'll give you because we have to talk about Will Smith every day. If Google slapping and Scientology, which I never knew any of until you didn't know any of it until you heard someone talk about it, right?
I read a Twitter thread yesterday from I don't want to call them a Scientology expert, but they are a documentarian who had worked on some of the biggest Scientology documentaries that have been made. Because
I will agree. I mean, the people who think it was still fake, I can't imagine. Why would Will Smith drag himself through the mud to make Academy Award ratings go up? Makes zero sense to me. But anyway, be that as it may, that's a discussion for another time. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe we can talk about that tomorrow. But one of the things that I didn't think made sense, and I think a lot of people make sense, as a guy, if you are going to fight, you don't go up and slap someone.
Sure.
That did seem a little WWE.
Yes.
If he was really mad, why wouldn't he go up and punch Chris Rock? But as you brought to my attention, just Google this, that slapping someone is to show like
it's to shun them essentially.
Yes.
Scientology.
It is a big part of Scientology.
Yes.
And as you even said, that this guy said that Will probably felt like if I don't go slap Chris to demonstrate that he's wrong, after the show tonight, Jade is going to slap me.
Yes, I'm trying to think how to like correctly word this. There is a strong belief within Scientology experts, like people outside of the Scientology bubble that study this, that believe that part of Will Smith going up on stage and doing that to Chris Rock was out of the fear of, if I don't do this, Jada might slap me. So there's a whole Scientology aspect of this. Now,
and not that he's afraid that Jade is going to beat the crap out of him because she's 5 foot nothing, 100 nothing.
I'm not a Scientologist. You're not a Scientologist. Who's to say why Will did this or what Jada would have done or what? Like, I don't know the ins and outs of it all. But the Twitter thread read is the guy comes at it from a very factual standpoint of like, here are the standards of Scientology. We know this to be true. Here's how you're supposed to handle insubordination. Here's how you're supposed to handle, like, if the person you're in a relationship or your spouse does something that you feel doesn't represent you well or doesn't defend you. And slapping is a huge, substantial part of the Scientology hierarchy.
So for all the people, and I was one of them, who's like, that part doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. Now
it makes a lot more sense. So just Google Scientology slapping and you will read a lot.
Yes.
There's a lot to it.
It was very, very interesting.
Okay, now we go. Now the floor is yours.
No, this is because you'll have things to say about this. There were controversial statements made. The state basketball playoffs, which, by the way, congratulations to Nori Christian girls on their state championship, and congratulations to Southern Columbia girls and St. John Newman boys on great runs and getting a chance to go to Hershey as well. At the end of the state championships, there were a lot of questions. It always comes up every year. People talk about this all the time, but it's, obviously it's exaggerated during this time of the year. Out of the 12 champions, 10 of them were private or charter schools. So that could be a Catholic institution, it could be a charter school, basically a non-boundary.
They have not. They call them non-boundary schools. Yes.
10 out of the 12 champions were them. At least one of these. So there were only 2 public school champions. One of the public school champions beat another public school, so they didn't have to play a Catholic or private school in the championship game. So essentially there was one public school out of 12 championship games that was able to win this championship. It was brought up to several coaches. I'll say this, I was shocked at how well every coach handled it. Every coach gave a similar answer of, it's unfair, but the other kids aren't doing anything wrong. Like, this is not, like, if I play for a charter or Catholic school, it is not my fault as an athlete that the rules dictate that I'm allowed to go and play for this school, and there's no punishment on the school or no punishment from the system.
Right.
So essentially, Lombardi, the director of the PIAA, was asked about this at the state championships. And some of the statements he made were absolutely, in my opinion, they were, as someone who invests a ton of time into high school athletics and into a high school program, these statements were horrific. He said that it sounds...
Some would even say repugnant.
Repugnant. He essentially said that it sounds like sour grapes. He said that it sounds as if, essentially he said the coaches were outcoached. It looks like some coaches made better adjustments.
Well, he didn't say it looked like some coaches were outcoached, but he verbatim say?
Time out.
Didn't
he said that?
No, I don't think he. I thought he verbatim said the coaches just need to coach better.
What's the
well?
difference?
That is verbatim. Though.
I understand.
Like, you're interpreting.
100%.
But the verbatim is bad enough.
Oh,
the coaches need to coach better.
Listen, I'll pull up the verbatim if you're nitpicking and you
no,
I'm saying the verbatim. Well, I'll do it.
If verbatim is damning, then just don't paraphrase. Just go with verbatim.
So Bob Lombardi, the PIAA executive director, he said, it sounds like sour grapes. I hope it's not, but I didn't hear any complaints when those teams were beating anyone on the road to the state championships. I think some teams made a little better adjustments in the games than others, some coaching adjustments. Essentially implying that
the teams that won had better coaches.
Yes. Essentially, like, if you're a public school and you lost to a private school, your coaching just isn't up to snuff.
Right.
That's essentially what the director of the PIAA said.
And listen, and I love Spencer, who's the coach at Newman, and obviously Newman's done great things. Anyone that doesn't see the advantage Newman has over Millville is just not looking. Like, that is
what Bob Lombardi said, because I don't even want to focus on like Lords or like, this is it's a state issue.
Those are the simple ones. Well, let's stay with Nori, who won the state title. How long has Nori had a basketball program?
I don't know how long their basketball program is. I know that within 3 years they were able to win a state title. So they went from essentially not being part of the PIAA to within 3 years as a Catholic school winning a state title.
It's a quick climb.
When you look at what other schools try to do from the public school sense, it's just like, if you're going to use the word climb, they're just 2 separate climbs. When a private or a Catholic school wins a state championship, it's still an incredible climb. Like, you still have to be better than all the other Catholic and private schools to get there. So it's still an incredible feat to do it, right? So it's not trying to diminish or take away from what these schools accomplish. It's in the context of, like, if you're a public school and you have to compete in the same environment, like the same field, it's almost impossible. It's very, very hard to do. And Lombardi's statements, like, in my opinion, they really showed, like, there's an arrogance to it, and there's a complete misinterpretation of what the actual problem is. Can I finish he has one more quote. Lombardi went on to say, "What are you going to do? Separate them? That's an immediate lawsuit on discrimination. We're not going down that road. So maybe we need to work together a little bit on this, but I don't have another answer. But I hate to hear that commentary from losing teams. It's disheartening. Would they have the same comments if they won? I was fortunate enough to be part of a program that won a year ago. And yes, I am making the same comments. I am here to say that the system is unfair, whether we win the game or not. It doesn't, win or lose, the system is rigged. It makes no sense that Bob Lombardi would believe that these statements are coming from a place of jealousy or that they're coming from a place of poor sportsmanship. because they're not. They're coming from a place of fact that every public school is playing in a rigged system.
Well, here's the problem. That the PIAA, it works fine for the PIAA.
Sure.
And he doesn't have a good answer, and he
Mm.
doesn't want to think about a good answer. And it's the issue with what NCAA was going through with all this. They're like, well, it works well for us, and as long as we can just keep the system going and it works well for us, then
Sure.
So I don't know. I don't think the lawsuit is true because every kid can go to a public school if they want to.
Sure.
And doesn't New Jersey do this? Doesn't New Jersey have private school champions, public school champions?
There's a lot of states that have. New York is separate. New Jersey is separate. Like most of them have separate.
I'd love to have Bob on. I would love to have an intelligent discussion with him. Where do you get the fact that you're going to get sued if we divide these up, private and public?
I mean, there's a couple of things.
You would say that the non-boundary schools are being discriminated against.
Right.
And where's their case?
But there's a couple of things I would love to say to Bob, because like even him saying this sounds like people that are sore losers. No, because there's people saying this 364 days out of the year. Like this isn't just brought up on one day out of the year when people lose games. Like this is a thing that is brought up consistently, weekly. People have been saying this for years, essentially since they have let Philadelphia in. And here, again, to go further down the rabbit hole, I thought there was a really good statement from the Newman-Goretti head coach. For those who don't know, Newman-Goretti is one of the power programs in the country. Forget the state of Pennsylvania, in the country. And he essentially said, he's like, listen, he goes, we didn't ask to be here. Like we were fine not being a part of the PIAA. They dragged us into this. Because he said, he's like, it's really hard for me to get my kids excited to play in this. He goes, we play in the Catholic League Championship at the Palestra. And he goes, it's 9,000 sold out. It is packed. And it's everybody in the city of Philadelphia who's who is in at that game. And then we have to turn around and I have to convince them to want to come to Hershey and play in a half-empty stadium. He's like, it's not like we're enjoying this, essentially is what the Goretti coach was implying. So it's not like the Philadelphia schools aren't thrilled about it. The public schools aren't thrilled about it. The only people who seem to be like trying to make this happen is the PIAA. And no one else on the outskirts of it is thrilled about it. No one else is happy about it.
You know what it sounds like to me?
What does it sound like?
Sour grapes.
Is that what it sounds like?
Yeah, it is. And that's the other thing. Like if you sit down with all these schools, you know, and I don't, we'll just use Newman again or Lourdes or Norrie Christian or whoever. Like you at Loyalsock, if you need, you got the kids who live in Loyalsock.
Sure.
If the kids want to move, and I say the kids want to, if the family actually moves their residency into the township, they can play, but they might have to sit out a year, and they got all this stuff.
All these transfer rules.
But so you can't say, well, South Williamsport has a good kid, Jersey Shore is a good kid, Central Mountain has a good kid, just come play for us.
Sure.
And they can say, okay. We don't have to move, we don't have to do anything. We'll just drive to school there. But Newman can.
Sure.
And everybody, Newman knows it's unfair. So like that is the thing that when he's saying, oh, it's just sour grapes, the private schools know it's unfair.
Yes, they absolutely
do.
Unfair. But again, they're not doing anything wrong.
Right.
They're like I've said over and over again.
They're playing by the rules.
Dude, I've been fortunate that I have like relationships with good programs around the state, whether it's a Trinity Catholic down near Camp Hill or whoever it may be. And I say to them over and over again, my strife, like my complaint is not with them. Like I have no problem with a Newman or Lourdes or a Trinity or a West Catholic or a Goretti. I have no issue with the institutions themselves at all because they're just doing what a system allows them to do. So to be upset at them makes no sense, none whatsoever.
Right.
So it's not about the school itself. It's not about like pointing the finger at the institutions. It's about the system. The system makes no sense. And again, I think what these Lombardi statements show is like a complete disconnect with the challenges and the effort that a public school puts in to try to accomplish something like that. Because for him to say, it just looks like they had better coaching adjustments, or there was someone on Twitter, a coach showed me this, that Newman-Goretti had an open gym the day after they won the state championship.
Okay.
And someone on Twitter posted all the complaints about public versus Catholic. Here's why they're better. essentially implying that
They just work harder.
That only Catholic schools have open gyms
gyms
at the end of the season. And I can assure you, there are public schools all across the state right now that had open gyms as soon as the season was over. Girls, boys, it doesn't. So the concept or the idea that these schools are just magically doing things inside the gym, that they have more open gyms and better coaches and all this stuff, is blasphemy. For Bob Lombardi to insinuate that is it's disgraceful, and it's a slap in the face to public school coaches across the state that are doing everything they can to try to compete in a system that is completely unfair.
You know what? I would bet, and I'm totally extrapolating this, but I would suspect that I'm right, that there are lots of public school people who say, you know why they're having open gym the day after they won the state championship? Because it's a basketball factory. None of the kids go to class. Now, I'm sure that's an exaggeration, but there are the perception of lots of these private schools is they are sports factories.
The Goretti coach made a really good comment after they won. And a reporter asked him essentially about the public-private school debate. And he was like, it sounds like you want me to apologize for having a better team. And he goes, I won't do that. He goes, I'm not going to apologize because my team is better. There's a system. We play within that system. And he goes, we didn't want to come. We were fine in our little bubble in Philadelphia. We had no issue not being a part of this. And we were dragged into it. So I totally respect him and his program. I respect most of these programs. I don't view them necessarily as like basketball factories. I view them as institutions or schools that are playing within the rules that they have been given, and we are given a different set of rules. And by the way, I'm not naive enough to know, like even at Loyalsock, we're extremely fortunate that we border an area like Williamsport. I'm not naive enough to not realize that we certainly get an influx of kids, whether it's in elementary school or middle school, that we get an influx of kids that come from a larger area into our public school system, right? But now imagine if you could just do whatever you wanted. Like imagine if we could just go get any player we wanted to go get. That's essentially what's happening with these charters and private schools. Like it's very hard to compete.
Well, don't you think too that this is an example, getting away from sports, but just to life in general, that Bob Lombardi runs the PIAA, which is a big deal. And in his world, he can't possibly imagine that to these Philly schools, that the Pennsylvania State Championship
isn't the biggest championship,
isn't more important than the Philly State Championship. And the Philly coach is saying, my kids don't even want to come.
No, it's not.
And
real quick, because to add on to your point, last year we played Math, Civics, and Science in the Eastern Semis.
Where are they? I mean, they're
Philadelphia.
Okay.
Math, Civics, and Science is in Philadelphia. They played in the city championship the night before our state semi game. So think about this. They played in the first round of the state playoffs. They then played in the Philadelphia championship and then played in the state. So the point I'm making is the people who run the Philadelphia championships know that their championship is just as valuable, if not more valuable than the state championships, because we're just going to play it right in the middle of the state championships because like our kids care about this more than the state championship. Right. So to your point, like, does Lombardi realize that? I would assume he does, but to your point, maybe he doesn't.
I don't think anyone could accept the fact that
it's not the most important.
Because I've heard guys that talk about with Major League Baseball players, and there's so many Latin players they'll play Major League Baseball summer and then they'll go play Winter League back home, and they talk about like why do they just had a 6-month season, and with spring training it's 7 months, and with the playoffs some of these guys just played 8 months. Why are they going back home and playing? And they say because winter ball is more important to them, because it's winning at home against they come here to make a boatload of money, but they go there because it matters more. And again, here in America, where we're like, what do you mean the World Series is the biggest thing in the world? I don't know. You watch some of those video games, like the Winter League baseball games down in Venezuela and in Puerto Rico and stuff like that. It's like a college football game. It's nuts.
Sure.
They are nuts.
Yeah.
So, who knows? And it's hard for us to fathom. How can that be bigger than ours? We're bigger. They make more money. just because it's about pride and it's about, you know,
Sure.
and it just matters more.
Yeah, and the environment, and they're also playing the kids that they see
Every day.
and so it's pride of the city and all that stuff. So
And you can imagine, not to cut you off, if you live in Philadelphia,
Mhm.
like there's a lot, they know Pittsburgh's out there, but like Philadelphia to them is Pennsylvania.
Sure,
Like when I lived in Baltimore, Baltimore was Maryland. There
right.
was nothing, like Annapolis was cool and had the Naval Academy and there was the beach. But other than that, there was no place in the state of Maryland that mattered
Right.
other than Baltimore.
Right. No, I'm with you. To add on to that, there were 12 championship games over 3 days. The total attendance was 16,946.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to double check this. When they sell out the Palestra for one game in the Philadelphia championships, I'm pretty sure it's over like 5,000-6,000. I think it's closer to like 8-9 grand. I'm going to double check that to be sure. But the point I'm making is like that Philadelphia championship almost equals the 12 state championship games for attendance at Hershey.
I think I did see this is the first year they cleaned out the stadium after.
Yes.
Or empty. I'd say cleaned out, like they swept it. They emptied it.
One person, because I told you, it used to be like a pilgrimage to Hershey. Like
it was an all-day pass.
All these state coaches would go down and you kind of meet up with people and you talk to people and all this stuff. One coach went to all 12 games, and I forget how much. I think he said it cost him $180 like to go for the 3 days. And like before, it used to cost them like $24, like to see all the games.
Yeah, you pay like $10 for the day.
Yes,
and then you were in all day,
and you would just stay and hang out. And so essentially, he was like, "Yeah, he's like, I'm done. Like that's the last time I'm coming to watch the state championships."
Yeah,
they'll
switch that because they have to see that. That's a terrible idea.
We'll see. I mean, so here again, like this is the funny thing too. He said so. Bob Lombardi was asked about the attendance. He said Lombardi wasn't displeased at the attendance. He said it's a sign of the times. Quote, with the games on statewide TV, live streaming of games and gas prices as high as they are, 5,000 people a day is not too bad, Lombardi said. Some schools don't draw, and I think the longtime basketball fan that used to come and spend 2 or 3 days at the games, we don't have that anymore, was the quote from Lombardi.
Why?
Exactly. It couldn't possibly be because of something they decided.
Well, but this is the point, too. If you had a public school championship, you know, what is the alumni base of math, civics, and science? First of all, it hasn't been around very long.
Sure.
Second of all, when you're recruiting a kid from here and a kid from here and a kid, you know, when Williamsport High School played in the state championship in 1984 and I went there, half the farm show was red.
Sure.
I mean, everybody was there. And I was from Williamsport. I was from Hughesville. And I was digging through my closet trying to find something red.
Right.
And everybody went.
Yeah.
Because just think of the alumni base of a place like Williamsport. Sure. And even if you're not, South Williamsport, which almost made it on the girls' side.
Right.
If the South Williamsport, how many people would have gone?
Sure.
And yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you.
So it's tough. So just not a great look for the PIAA. This is the funny part. Like for the last probably 6 to 8 years, like I have been absolutely just frustrated with their inability to just even understand that it's a problem. And then for these statements to come out after the 6 month the 6 years, I would have thought these statements would have came out like 5 years ago. Because maybe you haven't realized it yet, right? Like maybe it hasn't dawned on you that the situation is dire and that it does matter and that there is a problem. And for it to be now 6 years later and for him to say this stuff now, what was he watching for the last 6 years?
I think I'll explain this to you.
Go ahead.
If he says, yes, there's a discrepancy, then he has to act on it.
Yeah.
But if he just says, it's just sour grapes, now they can brush it under the rug and pretend it's not a problem. It's very, very hard to admit there's a problem and you be the one in charge. And then they say, what are you going to do about it? Right. And he says, I don't know, probably nothing. But if he says, there's not really a problem, now he can do nothing.
Sure. I've said to you and I've said to other people, I don't want there to be 2 separate tournaments, which I know sounds insane after everything I just said. But I've said before, I just want correct classifications. I don't want separate. Everybody's solution is separate. Put them over here, put everyone else over there, have separate tournaments. But my whole thing is just classify them correctly. So for like, if you are a charter school or a private school or a Catholic school, like whatever affiliation you are, if you are polling from a school district that is a 4A school district, you are a 4A school. It doesn't matter if you have 10 kids in the building. Like
I get you.
You're polling from a school district that is 4A or 5A or 6A, like whatever school district you are polling from, that is probably what you need to be in some of these athletic events. And if there's a charter or a Catholic or a private school that is polling kids from a 3A area, I will play them with a smile on my face. And if they beat us, they beat us. I have no issue with them being in the same tournament, but you have to get the correct classifications if you're going to allow them to play in the same tournament. You have to.
Well, wouldn't it be better if, I don't know, there's lots of ways. I think it would be neat for, to have a public school tournament. I really do. When Mount Carmel girls won, did they have to beat a Catholic school on the way through? Or did they beat all public schools?
I'm not sure. They were supposed to play Linden Hall, and then Linden Hall had a COVID case, and then they got bounced from it. So I would have to go.
Linden Hall's a private school, the way you say that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I would have to go back through and look at it. But again, this is because of the success form, the way things are shifting, like some of these 1A, 2A brackets, there's just not a lot of Catholic or private schools. Like if you can find a sweet spot in these 1A, 2A, 3A fields where there's not a ton, like 3A, 4A right now is becoming a cluster because all the Catholics and charters are moving up from 1A, 2A. And now if you're a 3A public school, you're looking around and it's like, I mean, this year on the east side of the 3A boys, 12 of the schools were Catholics or private schools. If you were a public school, you were going to have to play 3 private or Catholic schools just to get.
If there's 12 of them, they can have their own tournament. If there's 12, they can have their own tournament.
It is a minefield trying to navigate this bracket if you are a public school. It's really, really hard. Because I've told you before,
can't they just...
you can, this is the other misconception about it. I swear to God, when Lombardi or any other person in the PIAA that supports what's going on right now, they love it when a public school wins the state title.
Of course they do.
They love it because now they can go, see, it can be done.
So you screwed it all up by winning. You're part of the problem.
Like, see, it's possible. You can do it. And so what's weird is if you're a public school and you somehow navigate this minefield and you find a way to actually win it, you're biting your own hand. Because because now nothing's going to be solved because they're going to go see
nothing's going to be solved anyway because they don't want it to be
I'm just saying though, like it's this weird conundrum of like, even if you do figure out how to combat it, you're actually like shooting yourself in the foot.
That's why I said, did Mount Carmel girls have to beat any private schools? Because if you just pull up the raw numbers and they say, well, last year Mount Carmel won, and then, upon further digging, was Mount Carmel in one of those sweet spots where they didn't play any private schools because there were no private schools in their size.
I'm sure.
Because now that there's 6.
I get your point. I find it hard to believe they didn't play one. I mean, I could really look it up if you wanted me to. But to me, you're nitpicking at a thing that is so far. Like the idea that this should be decided on whether or not a public school can win a state championship and whether or not they played a Catholic school through the bracket, that we're so far beyond. Like the idea that is the cause of the problem is insane.
It's like watching Hoosiers and not realizing that Hickory was a big underdog.
It even further, it's like watching Hoosiers.
They changed that rule later because for a long time, Indiana only had one state championship.
So did Kentucky.
Oh, I didn't know that. And then after a while, they're like, you know what? Hoosiers won. Hickory won. They made a movie about it. It was cool. And now 40 years later, they're the only little school that's ever won. Right. Maybe we should change the rules. Right. And they did because they were unfair.
Well, this is the other thing. Like Jeff brings up a good point. When Sock Montour went together for golf a few years ago, they combined the enrollment and classified us accordingly. So again, if you're a public school, you're just held to these guidelines that none of the other schools are held to. None whatsoever. So I just don't understand. The Aliquippa thing's a good one too. It's weird that Lombardi couldn't stand how unfair it was for Aliquippa to continue to play football in 4A, even though they're a 1A class size, because they were unfairly crushing teams in 4A. I don't think you've heard this before. Paul Zeiss wrote a piece in the Pittsburgh Gazette.
I think you read it to me.
Did I read this to you? The quote about Aliquippa football.
I don't know if you read
So
the quote,
this was.
I know the story.
So here's the opening part of it because I don't think you've heard this quote. I'm old enough. So this is from Paul Geist, the Pittsburgh Gazette. He wrote, "I'm old enough to remember all the way back to January when PIAA director Bob Lombardi put officials from Aliquippa through the ringer at hearing about which classification the Aliquippa football team should play in. Lombardi and PIAA lawyer Alan Bunton were using the competitive balance formula to explain why the Quips needed to play up in 5A, even though they have competed 3 classes above their actual enrollment in 4A. Quote, it almost sounds like crocodile tears. You're complaining when you're humiliating your opponents and blowing them out, said Bowden to Aliquippa coach Mike Warfield at the hearing when Aliquippa won their appeal and got to stay in 4A. The lawyer went on to say, is it your position that your team would not be competitive at 5A? So here's Lombardi and the lawyer grilling a public school that voluntarily has moved up 3 classifications from 1A to 4A to try to be competitive. And they are grilling this school at the hearing. But then these Catholic and charters do whatever they want to do. And so it's just the hypocrisy. It just blows my mind. At some point, the public schools have had enough. I thought it might have been 2 years ago before COVID when they were having all the meetings.
Right.
There was a huge meeting, I believe, in State College. It had all these different representatives from public school and everything else. If this is not the tipping point, then shame on public schools. Shame on us for not getting together.
Well, and I'll tell you why it won't be the tipping
ourselves.
point. I'll even answer that.
Go
the
ahead.
reason it won't be is because I'll throw a number. The vast majority of public schools know they're never going to win a state title. Never. Even though we have 6 classifications and now, what used to be all league has become all state because there's 700 classifications.
But it still affects your district championships. Most public schools still have a dream of winning a district championship. There's very few public schools, especially now that there's 6 classifications. And I said to you this past year, hold on. There were 42 teams in District 4. 30-something of them got into district playoffs. So most public schools believe that a district championship is like an attainable goal. But when you start going through even the numbers of district titles, it is amazing what charters and Catholic schools do in the fluctuation of district championships.
But you have so many schools here. Unless it's Lords, unless it's and our Lords and Nori girls, they're the same size, aren't they?
Right now they are. Nori will probably have to move up to 2A.
And Newman was the same size. Okay. Weren't they all the same size?
Yes, but what is your point?
So unless you're single A, Montoursville doesn't care. Because we don't have to beat a Catholic school to win districts.
But here's the thing. They will eventually.
We care in football when we get out of districts and we get in the state playoffs and we keep running into Lancaster Catholic.
Well, by the way, this is a problem beyond basketball too. It's flooding into football as well.
But what I'm saying is there are lots of chunks of Pennsylvania, not America, of Pennsylvania where Montoursville will not have to play a non-boundary school to win a district championship in any sport. Neither will South, neither will.
But you don't think that's going
Jersey
to change.
Shore. Neither will.
Hold on, but you don't think that's going to change?
Not anytime soon.
For example, Nori girls are probably going to have to be 2A next year.
Okay.
So now all the 2A schools, and listen, I don't know if Nori girls, I'm assuming they'll continue to be successful, but things change, who knows. Now all of a sudden, all these 2A girls, these coaches and teams, there will be a Christian school in their field. There will be a non-boundary school in their field for the first time ever. Newman boys, if they continue to be successful, will probably have to move up as well too. So it's not one of these things. It's knocking on the door. Even these schools that have never had to worry about it before, we talked about it in the Lehigh Valley. Lehigh Valley for years never had a charter school. Executive Charter has been there for 3 years, and they have won the district title every single year. It has completely changed the Lehigh Valley's point of view on charter and Catholic versus public in less than 3 years because one school was opened up. So even these schools that think it's not a problem, it is knocking. It is a matter of time before it is.
When it does knock, then they'll care. Okay. But I'll tell you, there's a lot, Jersey Shore doesn't care next year.
You don't think so?
Because they don't have to beat one. Central Mountain doesn't care next year. Okay. So they don't have to beat one.
Okay. They're also a little different though, because Central Mountain's 5A. So the student population allows you the ability you can compete better than what a 2A, 3A can if you're 5A.
And
The number of
I get that.
bodies helps with that. I'm not saying it's still not
No,
unfair,
I do
but
get
it
that.
certainly helps. It makes the load a little less. It's still a
So
challenge.
here's my
it's still
solution.
really hard.
We buy the Lycoming Mall,
Yes.
make it a charter school.
Lycoming charter.
That's it.
There you go.
Lycoming charter will crush everyone.
Let's call them the Stingrays.
No, we're coming up with something better than that.
Oh, really? What's better than that?
Right, maybe the Peacocks.
No, that's taken. At least Stingrays is original.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is it?
Who else is the Stingrays?
I like River Rats.
I do like River Rats. I've told you before I like River Rats.
Susquehanna should have been the River
I
Rats.
really do like the River
We blew
Rats.
it. We had it. We blew it. We blew it. Do you know there's a school back, because we've talked about that. I don't know. We need to shut up here because people aren't listening anymore. Williamsport is the only millionaires in the country.
Okay.
It's the only high school with that nickname
Sure.
because of the history of it. There is a school somewhere who are the criminals
Okay.
because their first school in that district, once upon a time,
Yes.
had been a jail.
Yes.
It was like the old city hall or whatever, and they renovated it. And
Okay.
so it's like the cell block.
Yeah.
It's a bar now, but it used to be a jail, so they call it the cell block.
Yeah.
So when they made this school and they were like, oh, and they needed to come up with a nickname for it, they became the criminal. I don't know where it is. I think they're the only one in the country.
There's some good ones. There's a school down south that's literally their mascot is the Mules, and I think that's really,
Muhlenberg.
What's that? Is it Muhlenberg?
Muhlenberg College, the
Is
Muhlenberg Mules.
Yeah. See,
Yes.
I think that's awesome.
Which now I'm like, what do they just smuggle drugs across the border? What do they do here? Is that a major? Is that a
It could be.
so
Real
anyway.
quick, if you want to read more about that, you can find Paul Zeiss at the Pittsburgh Gazette. And there was also the original article was by Mike White as well. You can find his at the Post Gazette as well. So again, just I don't know, maybe someday something will be resolved, but
Well,
I'm hoping this
it's
is
one
some sort of
thing.
a tipping point.
Everyone knows it's not fair, and this is an aspect where what's the statement? It's better to keep your mouth shut and let people think a fool than to open it and take away all doubt or whatever.
Sure.
You can't come out and make this statement that like, oh, it's not that. It's just coaching. It's an unbelievably bad statement to make.
If he would have came out and just said like, I don't think anything's wrong, at least then I'd just be like, all right, like I disagree, but like at least you're not like rubbing salt into the wound of like what is happening.
Right.
Like to come out and just be like, yeah, I think they were out coached. Like get out of here.
This is
Like,
where
that's
you give the
insane.
company line of
Insane.
we're looking into it. We're always looking into it. We have like just throw the company line out.
Just something, anything but sour grapes and throwing coaches under the bus.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
Just absolutely bonkers.
I'm with you.
Thank you guys for watching the Midday Show today. Again, for all your local news, be sure to go to NorthcentralPA.com. We will be back tomorrow. And shout out to Williamsport, Hughesville, and Lycoming College for some good news stories today.
We need more good news
Yes, we do.
and more slapping.
No more slapping.
Slapping is good for our show.
I'm Jeff Everett. He's Mark Messina. We will see you tomorrow.